Skip Bayless is pretty bullish on Deion Sanders, but I think he's right about one thing. The other thing, I think he's completely off on. The right thing, winning championships.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free, wherever you get your podcast. So let's dive right into the mix of it. We're talking about a natty in the future. I think over the past couple of days, which I feel like this is kind of like the ongoing thing with Coach Prime, just because when people interview him, they ask him the same 12 questions. And so we are like recycling the same topics. But there was something that Dan Patrick asked him 2 days ago that we talked about probably 17 umpteen times on the show. And it is Coach Prime going to leave Colorado for the NFL? And Skip Bayless did a whole spiel about it on Undisputed and talked about how he thinks it's a possibility and what it would take and what he thinks will happen because Coach Prime wants to always conquer the next level or whatever it may be. But let me tell you what he said. So he said, could I see Deion Sanders winning multiple championships at Colorado, not at Alabama or Georgia or somewhere else? I'm talking about Colorado. And then eventually go and say he wants to conquer the NFL. And Skip Bayless, if you guys didn't know, is a huge Cowboys fan. And he wants Coach Prime to eventually take over as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. And so this discussion, while we know, I told you guys like 17 times already, Coach Prime doesn't have interest in the NFL. He said it himself on every interview he's been in. And there's just a different vibe when you coach at the NFL level. I think Matt Rule experienced it. I think Greg Schiano experienced it to a degree. Who else am I missing? Lane Kiffin, obviously. Jim Harbaugh. Pete Carroll is obviously one of the success stories, but he had NFL experience. I'm trying to think of who else. Nick Saban failed as an NFL coach. It is not the same to coach at the NFL level than it is the college level. At the college level, you are more of I won't say a dictator, but you're a ruler. You rule your program. They listen to you. Everything's your way or the highway. Whereas the NFL, they get paid more than you. They are more important than you. And at the end of the day, if a franchise is tasked to pick between a head coach or a superstar player, more often than not, they will side with the player just because that's the one. People pay to watch the player. They don't pay to watch Bill Belichick stand on the sidelines. And you can make the argument that certain coaches have that ability where it's like me or him. And like Bill Belichick, for instance, they chose him over Tom Brady or whatever, but Bill Belichick is probably one of the best coaches football has ever seen. So that's like a one-off. But I still don't think Coach Prime goes to the NFL unless it's the coach's sons. I think that's the only way he leaves. And even then, that would require the team that drafts Shedeur, because Shedeur is probably going to be a first-round pick. The team that drafts Shedeur would not only have to draft Shedeur, be somewhere where Coach Prime wants to go, but they'd have to be willing to hire him, and they'd have to have the opening at the right time. And so we'll see if that happens. I doubt it. But he talked about the championships. And that's the part that stood out to me because, like I said, Coach Prime to the NFL, let's worry about that when we get there. But the championships, is Colorado going to be a championship contender? And I'm here to tell you that they can be eventually. I think while a lot of people are probably going to watch this and be like, oh my gosh, this guy's just being a homer for Colorado. No. Winning championships is all about how well you recruit and develop. And right now, Colorado can recruit, and their development is a little shaky. But I think it's going to get ironed out once he hires his next offensive coordinator and probably offensive line coach. I think the Sean Lewis experiment in Colorado is over, if I had to guess. But there's this little thing called the blue chip ratio. And this is basically what determines if you can win a championship or not. And so let me ask you this question. And you guys could comment below. I wish we could like discuss this live so I could see your instant reactions. Do you think Deion Sanders is going to recruit at an elite level at Colorado? Yes or no? If you said no, you're lying to yourself. He is going to recruit at an elite level. He has already shown each and every year that he's good for at least flipping one talented 5-star commit. And that was when he was at Jackson State. He did that with Travis Hunter, and then he did it again at Colorado. And so now that they've seen just how popular he is, just how good the team could be when they're playing at their best potential, more top talents are going to gravitate towards Colorado. Now, I don't know if they're going to get any this class, but they will continue to recruit at a high level, and they will continue to bring in top talent. And that's the key to winning championships. And you're probably like, no, it's not. You need to have good coaches. You need to have this, and this. Yes, you need to have good coaches. You need to have good development. But it doesn't matter if you have the best coaches and the best development. If you're not recruiting at a high clip, you are not going to win the championship. And so 24/7 Sports releases what is called the blue chip ratio every single year. So it's a thing put out by Bud Elliott, who I'm quite fond of. I love his work. He puts together this blue chip ratio, and he looks into the percentage of the teams, basically the percent of 4 or 5-star recruits that they have. And so this is what he says. The blue chip is just a minimum amount of talent needed to win the national championship. It's not required to make the college football playoff. Making the playoff does not require some level of talent, but schedule also matters quite a bit. It's not a substitute of culture, coaching, player development, etc. It is also not something you should use to pick games. Betting on a team outside the blue chip ratio to win it all is a pretty bad bet, as history has shown, but using the blue chip ratio to pick individual games is also a bad bet. It is simply not designed for that purpose. The only purpose is to say which teams have recruited well enough to win a championship. And so coming into this season, there was a total of 16 teams who had the proper blue chip ratio. And if you guys don't believe me, the minimum number is 52%. That is the lowest amount of 4 or 5-star recruits that you need to have to win the title, because in 2020 and 2011 and 2012, Alabama had 71%. Florida State had 53 in 2013. Ohio State 68. Alabama 77. Clemson had the lowest amount in 2016 when they had 52%. They also had a generational quarterback. Alabama had 80% in 2017. Clemson 61. LSU 64 in 2019. Alabama 83 in 2020. 2021 was Georgia with 80%, and then 2022 was Georgia with 77%. So then you look at the teams who had that ratio this year, and it says the team. This is also the breakdown. It says the teams who signed more blue chip recruits than non over the last 4 classes. So it's kind of over the last 4 classes. So Coach Prime hasn't even been there enough to have a roster full of blue chip players. He would literally have to go out and just get straight up 4 and 5 stars all the time. So it's going to take a couple years to get there. But it's Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas A&M, Clemson, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, Notre Dame, Florida, Miami, Penn State, Michigan, USC, Auburn. So right now we can eliminate Clemson, Notre Dame, Auburn, USC, Penn State, Miami, Florida, and then let's see. Yeah, A&M, Clemson, LSU, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Florida, Miami, Penn State, USC, and Auburn. So 10 of the 16 schools are already out. That leaves Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, and then Michigan as the only programs left. So there's 6 programs already. So these programs have all been recruiting at an elite level for multiple years. And so can Colorado win the championship under Deion Sanders? I think they can. It's not going to be right away, though. I think Urban Meyer said it that they could be winning in year 2. The trends, the history has not shown that to be a thing. And the more players he brings in the transfer portal, the more the longer it could take in terms of if he's not valuing recruiting, because it's all about recruits. I think he wrote a little piece about transfers in here as well. And he said, but what about transfers? Transfers are not counted. Transfers are not governed by the same recruiting rules, and although they are important, they are rarely consequential enough to turn a non-contender into a contender. More on transfers and the evolution of the blue chip ratio is going to come soon. So maybe the case is different with Coach Prime because he's bringing in so many transfers, but the blue chip ratio has yet to lie to us. And so if it comes to winning a championship, Colorado needs to focus on recruiting. They need to hit on Jordan Seaton. They need to flip guys like Charles Lester. They need more Cormani McLeans and Travis Hunters and Antoine Hills. And so I think they're going to be headed in the right direction, But for Skip Bayless to say that they're going to win championships and then he's going to leave for the NFL, I disagree with leaving for the NFL part. I think Colorado can win championships because I think Deion Sanders has the potential to be an elite recruiter. I think it just comes down to more stability on his coaching staff. I think this last week or so was kind of a red flag, if you will. And I think it comes down to his staff's ability to develop, because it also comes down to it's great to get good players, but like I said, in those programs that I eliminated from the blue chip ratio chart, where I was like Miami, Auburn, USC, it doesn't matter if you have the most talented roster in the country. You have to develop them and use them correctly. So I think a Colorado championship can come, and it's just going to take more time than people realize, and people need to be patient. But Coach Prime also needs to generate more stability, and he needs to figure things out on his coaching staff and figure out how to solve his team's issues as we move forward. Otherwise, it's going to get a little difficult to kind of reach that goal. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsor over at Prize Picks. If you don't know about Prize Picks, let me tell you. It's the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. And now I could play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on the projected stats, and place your entry. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projection across football and basketball with a specials league, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports leagues. For example, you could go LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Or you could also play along Prize Picks' favorite celebrities like Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz on the community plays. So if you want to get in on the Prize Picks fun, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for our first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Welcome back. We are currently talking about the Sanders brothers, the Sanders return, because as I mentioned in my opening topic, people keep asking about when Deion's going to the NFL. The question is also, when will his sons go to the NFL? So same interview, same topic. Dan Patrick was like, Shedeur, Shilo, are they going to the NFL? And Coach Prime said they're not going to leave their dad this year after just 1 year. And that there's multiple reasons. I think we've already touched on this, but I want to touch on it again. And I also want to touch on the future of the program. For starters, let's take a look at it from a dad perspective. If we're going to listen to what Coach Prime says, and he says he has no interest in going to the NFL and that his interest is solely in helping young men at the college level become better young men and developing college players, then we assume he's going to stay at the college level as a head coach. How many more times will he have the opportunity to coach his sons at this highest level where they have the biggest platform in college football? The answer is, after next year, never again, unless Shedeur stays. But again, Shiloh's going to run out of eligibility next year. So there's that. He wants to be with his sons. He wants to kind of stay with his sons one more time, because, I mean, if you see the well-off media videos, those guys are together every day. Like, it's a cool thing. I think everybody wishes they could be with their parents and like everybody live out their dreams all at the same time. It's just not something that's common. And then we have that reason. We have the father-son duo aspect. We have the reason of Shedeur Sanders is going to be a first-round pick, probably. If he's in this year's class, it's going to be tougher to be a first-round pick. You got Caleb Williams, pretty much a lock at number 1. Drake May, number 2 quarterback right there. Michael Penix and Bo Nix are right there as well. And then you have other guys somewhere down the line, Spencer Rattler and guys like that, and Dylan Gabriel maybe, and Quinn Ewers maybe, and just all these guys, all these DJ Uiagalelei. We don't know where he's going to go, but there's so many quarterbacks. If Shedeur, and Coach Prime already said this, if Shedeur declared this year, he would not be the top quarterback. He said that himself. If he goes next year, Shedeur Sanders will probably be the favorite to be the first quarterback taken off the board. So there's that. It boosts their draft stock. And then Shilo is a late round pick at best. I think Shilo has the opportunity to raise his draft stock by playing more and playing better, and just showing that he's improving, because I think he's a risk taker. And when it works out, it works out. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. And so it's always great when it does. And then when it doesn't work out, it's like, Would have loved to have that back. But here's the most important part. Colorado's going into a Big 12 conference next year that outside of Utah, which we don't even know what Utah's situation is because Cam Rising has yet to commit to whether he's staying or leaving. We also don't know what the rest of the Big 12 is going to look like. Is Dave Aranda going to get fired? Is Neil Brown going to be around? I think he will be. Is Dana Holgorsen going to be around? Maybe. But the Big 12 is losing Texas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, they're having a good year, but I would say they're benefiting from a easier schedule and they're benefiting from the rest of the Big 12 being down. So the Big 12 may be down. So if Coach Prime returns Shedeur and Shilo next year, Colorado could very well be in the mix in the Big 12 in year one. And that's another reason that he wants to have his sons back. And so I talked about the blue chip ratio earlier. You win games, you compete in the Big 12 next year. Well, guess what? Recruits kind of are going to want to come play for you. It is what it is, especially since the Big 12 is more, I'm going to say global. I was going to say global. Yeah. The Mr. Worldwide, the Big 12 is not global. It is not in Miami, or it's not in Miami. It is not in Mexico or Germany or any of these other cool places, but it is more nationwide. So they have schools in Florida. They have schools in Cincinnati, Ohio. They have all these schools, Utah, Texas. And so it's going to help Colorado get into another footprint if they couldn't get in already, which I think Coach Prime could get into these footprints easier. But now if there's a guy on the fence about coming to a school that maybe doesn't come to Colorado very often, that'll change, or come to Florida very often, that'll change. So having his two sons can help Colorado compete right away, and that'll help recruiting right away. And it's a win-win for everybody. They'll boost their stock. They'll boost their father's stock at Colorado, and they'll help the program win for years to come. So I think there's a lot to be said about that decision for them to come back for yet another year running back. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. Again, that's $150 if your team wins and just a $5 bet. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that includes spread, player props, over-unders, and more. So if you want to get in on this fun, get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back. We are talking about the Coach Prime effect. This is, another example of the positives of hiring the most famous person in your sport. We learned today, via the school itself, that on Wednesday, or they announced on Wednesday, that Colorado plans to install a new video board at Folsom Field that's going to be ready by the 2024 season, so next year. Athletic Director Rick George said this is a necessary upgrade as the program looks to continue building positive momentum ahead of its return to the Big 12. So it's going to be 5 times the surface area of the current board. The project is going to cost around $15 million, and when it's finished, the board will be 98 feet wider than its current length, which is 32. So it's going to be literally triple the amount. This comes as Colorado head coach Deion Sanders brought up a new level of tension. They've obviously, I think at one point there was a stat that every Colorado home game was generating like $20 million or something crazy like that. And so what does this show us besides the fact that Coach Prime is making enough money that they could renovate a 100-year-old stadium that you see behind me? Oh, that's the video board right there. Right there. Yeah. So that it's literally, you can see it in my picture. It's not very big, but it's right there. It's about yay big. Yep. Right there. It's about yay big. And so if that's triple, it's going to go from, let's see, this white part right here is also going to be covered the way the picture looks. So it's going to go all the way over here. And if you can't see, if you can't see where I'm pointing, let's just imagine a normal size scoreboard and then triple it, make it bigger. It's going to be like a SEC style scoreboard. It's going to be like the scoreboards that like Alabama, Texas, or whatever program has, because realistically, this program wants to kind of compete and they want to be at that level. And so what better way to get at that level than invest in your stadium, your facilities? And Folsom Field's too much of a classic to, I think, redo the stadium, but you could always make modifications to it. So I really like what they're doing there. Coach Prime, they couldn't have done it without him. Obviously, if they hired anybody else, this probably is impossible. And I think it just goes to show that Coach Prime is he's changing the game for Colorado. He's making them a much more serious program. He's making them a program that is able to spend money, and kids care about facilities. They care about how much money is being invested into the program they attend. And so this could also be a recruiting tool that they use for years to come. I don't think the scoreboard is going to be a major selling point, but when they show that they could throw money at their stadium and like redo it and stuff, kids care about that. So the Coach Prime effect is real. It's going to continue to be real until the wheels fall off. And so I think it could lead to championships, the Coach Prime era, but I think they need to recruit more, which I think his son's returning will help them do that. And it's going to be a great experience. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. We're so close to 4,000. I'd really appreciate it if we got there. Hope you guys have a great day. We're going to have some great guests coming up, and I will see you guys tomorrow.